Excellent.
Cool.
Okay.
Underscore Neri26 underscore says, I've been in the apparel field for over 15 years. Over the past 3 years in Canada, I don't seem to find any one brands with quality on par to the brands I usually bought. I question if it's because of the location or the apparel industry as a whole have changed.
So that's actually a great question. And I think that comes to two really big factors. The first factor is that a lot of brands obviously are pushing for cheaper and cheaper products. So it's moving into cheaper and cheaper regions or cheaper and cheaper factories that can't execute on the product as well because they want higher margins because the cost of business is getting higher. So I think that's one factor. And the secondary factor, which I think plays a much bigger part, is a lot of North American brands have offshored all their manufacturing knowledge. Whereas like 10, 15 years ago, if you had stuff made here, you can go visit the factory, you could work with them hand in hand to develop that product. But what's happening now is a lot of brands, they're so siloed where the designers are only designing, the product developers are only product developing, and nobody actually knows how the products are actually made because they've never visited a factory before. A lot of designers creating things on Adobe Illustrator, they get sent to a factory overseas, and that's left for a factory overseas to interpret their designs and execute ultimately on their tech pack and their spec sheet. And then what ends up happening is they get a product back, and because of that lack of knowledge of the manufacturing side, they don't know actually what to check for. So they go, is the ribbing right? Okay, it looks right. Is the fabric the right way? It looks right. Each individual siloed departments, they don't know about shrinkage. They don't know about, is this the right thread? They don't know about, is this the right application? So you end up with a product that maybe isn't what was originally intended, but it's really a combination of really offshoring all that manufacturing knowledge and trying to push the product down has really created this ecosystem across, I think, a lot of different brands of products that have just gotten worse and don't last over time. And when every other brand is doing this, it doesn't become an issue because everyone becomes used to shit clothing and clothing that doesn't last. And it's until the economy and the market as a whole chooses to buy better clothing, then that will actually pivot and brands will invest time and energy into that.
GSA Design Inc. asks, do you think there is a market and demand for really good quality high-end blanks made in USA?
Yeah, honestly, that's such a tough one to answer because I think consumers definitely want higher quality blanks, and there's a lot of more higher quality blank companies that are popping off. However, it's like a chicken and the egg thing where you end up with a market where you get brands that are willing to invest money on higher quality blanks that don't have the knowledge to source products overseas or manufacture overseas. They'll eventually gain that knowledge and then eventually go overseas to manufacture their own custom clothing. I think one thing you have to also consider too is higher quality blanks, they're gonna be 20, 25 bucks maybe. And at 20, 25 bucks, as a brand scales and has enough capital to invest into the product, you can spend $6, $7, $5 to get the same shirt made overseas and get 5 times the amount of shirts. So this just becomes an economical argument of, does it actually make sense for this product? So I think it's like a weird market position to be in where you're almost like a stop on the way of a brand's growth where they'll eventually grow out of you. So then it becomes really difficult to manage your customer acquisition costs, knowing that your biggest clients are always going to end up leaving you.
Co_Lesterol says, great tip. Which fabrics or combinations of tends to pill?
So let's actually bring this back a little bit about what pilling actually is. Pilling ultimately is the filaments or the fibers of the yarns getting rubbed up against each other and then balling up. So think of like these yarns and then they get rolled against each other, then they turn into little balls. That's what pilling is ultimately. So you're not going to get a lot of pilling from what's called staple fibers, like 100% cotton, because those fibers will just come off as lint in your laundry. You're going to get that with a lot of continuous fibers. So fibers that are quite long, where they've been brushed, so they've been mechanically destroyed on the surface to bring up those fibers to make the fabric feel softer. Those fibers now, at a certain length, compared to the ones beside it, at a certain length, they're going to start actually crossing and starting the pilling process. So you're going to get this with a lot of polyesters, you can get this with nylon, but it really comes from that raised peach finish. You're not really going to get a lot of pilling from a like Nike dry fit shirt because it's so smooth on the surface and all those fibers are still intact. So it's really about looking out for those soft peach fabrics, because eventually they will all pill. It's just about how long until it does. Sometimes that threshold is well beyond where you're gonna not even want to wear that item anymore. And I would say at that point, even though it might pill down the road, that garment has done its job.
0_aura asks, at Joe Ing, just wanted to ask, what's that GSM scale-like machine called? I wanted to pick one up to double check my manufacturers aren't cutting corners.
Okay, so what that is, and for those who don't know, GSM stands for grams per square meter, and it's a way to measure the weight of fabric. And when it comes to fabric, it's just one way to measure it. You can also count the knit structure, you can see the thickness of the fabric. There's so many other components, but GSM is a great way to at least measure, is what I'm paying for actually there? Because the raw material weight is going to equal the cost of the fabric. But what that tool is a GSM cutter and a GSM scale. What I would say, or any precision scale would actually work. You just want to go to the second decimal point of a gram. But what I'd say is just hold off for a little bit, because honestly, that green GSM cutter you see us use is garbage, and 99% of the textile industry uses it, and I still don't know why. But we're actually developing our own GSM cutter and our own suite of tools for brands here that really takes things up to a completely different level of how it functions and executes the job. You're gonna be very surprised on how much of a leap forward the products we're creating are.
Shooting Star asks, I get that blend matters, but aren't there different qualities of, say, polyester, for example?
Yes, so there definitely is. I think it's probably referring back to the Bell and Canvas video. So when I brought up that composition, it was really just to showcase, hey, it's the same parent company. They're probably most likely using the exact same yarns that they're using for Bell and Canvas. There's no reason why they would use other ones. But when it comes to yarns, I think a lot of people say it's 80% polyester and they think it's 80. It's like, no. I always say, like, fabric is like baking. There's different grades of flour. There's different grades of polyester. There's different types of polyesters. There's different shapes of polyester filament. You can get polyester that's shiny. You can get polyester that's matte. And each yarn itself is made up of multiple filaments. So you can get very low filament count yarn. It goes so in depth. So when it comes to, is polyester, absolutely not. But one thing you will notice is cheaper polyesters will perform worse than higher polyesters, just like any other product. If you're looking for something that's going to pill a lot, that's going to come from a lot of cheaper polyesters. When it comes to nylons, there's nylon 6, there's nylon 6/6, nylon 12, polyamides or nylons as well. So you can't just look at a label and just go to your manufacturer and say, I want 40% cotton, 60% whatever, and you're gonna get exactly that, because there's so many different intricacies and inputs to get the ultimate fabric that you're looking for. And when it comes to, obviously, these yarns, this goes so in depth into the product creation cycle that you'd be surprised how little brands know about this, how little cut and sew factories actually even know about this, because this information is really just from yarn supplier to knitter. So even a lot of dye houses don't even know about this. And the unfortunate part with the garment industry is everything's so siloed and everyone tries to protect all their knowledge that there's so many trade secrets. But thankfully, because of the volume we manufacture, we're able to actually go through every single step. So we have a much better knowledge of the exact components that it takes to make the specific product we're trying to make.
So this question comes from the spectrometer video that we released. So Sailor Moon Crunch asks, does the lighting in the room affect the rating, i.e. should be used in a light box?
So let's bring this back a little bit for the rest of the audience. For color for clothing brands, one thing you are always doing is the color I chose in the design process the color I'm getting in manufacturing? So the tool that she was talking about is a spectrometer, and it gives a digital reading of what color is. So for that, you actually don't need to use it in a light box because it seals out all external light and has its own light source. When it comes to reviewing color without that tool, you absolutely need to review color in a light box. What a light box is calibrated color temperatures. So color is actually representative of the reflectivity of the light source into your eyes. And what a light box does is, these are D65 bulbs. They're the exact same color temperature, and their factory in China, your factory in Turkey, your factory in Italy, wherever your factory is going to have the exact same light box with the exact same color temp, so they can review the color under the exact same conditions. Because if you're reviewing colors without this, if you have overcast sky, that's going to make your colors look cooler. If you have a bright sunny day, it's going to make it look warmer. If it's in the evening, it's going to make it look warmer. If you live in the UK, it's going to look cooler. And then, you have to play in the fact that you and I don't see color the same way either. What you perceive as blue, I might perceive a little differently. So color is one of the things where it's so subjective that using a light box is one of the tools to remove one of the variables in that decision-making process. But that's why we like digital tools here, because I don't want any opinions. I just want pure data. I want pure facts. Is this color accurate? How close is it? What do we need to change? But obviously, it's a very expensive tool that not a lot of brands can afford. So what I would say for smaller brands is just invest in a light box. A light box itself is still very expensive. It can be a couple grand, but you're going to be able to ensure that you're at least getting consistent products out for your customers.
Tommy asks, do you have expertise with jeans? If so, what do you look for to determine the quality?
So yes, we actually make a lot of denim. We make denim with our partners in China, and we make denim with our partners in Turkey. I would say the number one thing I always look for is just the fabric, because the fabric is such a large part of the component cost that if a brand isn't willing to invest in good quality denim, that kind of just sets the stage for the rest of the product. When it comes to distressing and washes, that's really just like a partnership and an art form of the factory that's making the denim on how they're going to execute the intended design. But I think denim is one of those things where people have seen so much denim throughout their lives that most people can tell if denim is going to be cheap or not, just because most often times cheaper denim is significantly lighter weight, just because there's a lot less cotton in there. Often there'll be very kind of silver cheap trims placed on cheap denim, rather than the brand actually taking the time to custom brand the rivets and the zippers and everything. When it comes to denim itself, I would say it's always going to be a combination of the attention to detail and the fabric that's ultimately chosen. If you guys want to see more behind the scenes secrets on the fashion industry and learn more about how to create products and brands, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out these videos.